slide your jack at the back of the bike, you have to jack your back wheel off the ground about 3/4 of an inch. My shock's a little bit longer, and it gives you plenty of room to play with it. In the box of shocks, there's a fitting to adjust the preload and 2 pins to plug up your air lines. So you shove them in there, wiggle them, and you'll feel them drop in about 1/4 of an inch. This way you can put your shocks on the counter in the garage. It won't leak oil. When you get around to selling the bike, you put the old shocks on it, send it down the road. We should be able to use these on any other bike you buy. I usually use a bar when I'm taking the shocks off on the last shock, so you don't booger up that last thread as you're pulling it out and having the wheel drop. When you put your shock on, in this video I'm putting the top bolt in first. I kind of found it's maybe simpler sometimes to put the bottom bolt in. It's a little harder to line up that bottom bolt on the swinging arm, and it's easier to line up the one on the top. I usually grab the 2-foot, 3-foot bar and lift it up so there's no load on it. And I don't tighten up the bolts all the way. I leave them, turn them in a couple turns, leave a little slop in there. That way it's easier to get the other shock set up, and once you get all the 4 bolts in the shocks, then you can tighten them up. I usually put a little Loctite on them as well, a little permanent or the blue stuff, just keep them from backing off. So what we're doing now is measuring the height of the shock between the 2 spring covers. There's a spring clip in there. It's probably sitting at about 9 inches, 8.5. It varies between shocks. The same shock, measure how long it is, and then when you sit on it and sack it out, measure the same side. Don't go from one side to the other. What you want to do is bounce on the bike about 10 times and then let the motorcycle pick you up, and then we re-measure the shock height. It should be 5/8 to 1/2 inch a sack. Sometimes I just kind of push on it when the guy's weight's on there, just so it picks him up. The bottom spring cover is where your spring adjuster is. Twist that off. Should have mentioned to begin with that the shock shaft goes to the top of the frame generally. The body goes to the swinging arm. I'm only showing you adjusting that 1/4 of a turn. To get 100 thousandths worth of adjustment up or down, you have to turn that probably 5 half turns. So usually I'm adjusting it 10, 12, 15.